What if everything we think we know about the dawn of civilization is just the tip of an ancient, buried iceberg? Beneath the sands of modern Iraq lies a forgotten world, Sumer, the cradle of human culture, where gods walked among mortals, kings ruled for thousands of years, and secrets so profound they defy modern understanding were etched into clay tablets. This isn't just history, it's a puzzle waiting to be solved, a mythology so rich and strange that even the most dedicated history buffs have barely scratched its surface. Today, we're peeling back the layers of time to uncover 30 shocking secrets of Sumerian mythology, truth so extraordinary, they'll make you question what you thought was possible. Picture a land where the divine and the human weren't just connected but intertwined, where the gods weren't distant figures but active players in everyday life, shaping destinies with their whims. The Sumerians didn't just worship their deities, they lived alongside them, recording encounters that sound more like science fiction than ancient scripture. From the epic of Gilgamesh, humanity's oldest written story, to the baffling accounts of the Anunnaki, the celestial beings who supposedly descended from the heavens, these myths aren't just tales. They're fragments of a lost reality, whispering clues about our origins, our purpose, and perhaps even our future. But here's the twist: much of what you've heard about Sumerian mythology might be wrong, or at least incomplete. Hidden in the fine lines of cuneiform scripts tucked away in temple hymns and royal decrees are revelations that challenge mainstream interpretations. Did you know the Sumerians might have described advanced technology millennia before its invention, or that their stories of a great flood mirror other global myths with eerie precision? This isn't just about dusty artifacts, it's about unraveling a cosmic mystery that stretches across time and cultures. So settle in, because what you're about to discover will change how you see history and maybe even the universe itself. The most startling secret of Sumerian mythology begins with a group of beings called the Anunnaki, far more than just gods in the traditional sense. According to ancient tablets, these entities descended from the heavens, not as ethereal spirits, but as physical beings who walked, ruled, and even bred with humans. The Enuma Elish, one of the oldest surviving creation texts, describes them arriving on Earth with a singular purpose: to mine gold for their dying home planet. But here's where it gets eerie. The same tablets detail how the Anunnaki grew weary of labor and, using their advanced knowledge, genetically altered primitive humans to serve as workers. This wasn't just myth to the Sumerians, it was recorded history, etched in stone with chilling precision. Modern researchers like Zecharia Sitchin have taken these accounts even further, proposing that the Anunnaki were actual extraterrestrial visitors with technology so advanced it bordered on magic. Their descriptions of fire that roared without wood and chariots that soared without wings sound suspiciously like engines and aircraft, even more compelling. Sumerian art often depicts these gods carrying strange bags, objects some theorists argue were portable power sources or even genetic tools. But the real bombshell lies in the parallels between these ancient texts and contemporary science. The idea of genetic manipulation, once dismissed as fantasy, now stands at the forefront of bioengineering. Could the Sumerians have been documenting real encounters with a civilization capable of rewriting DNA? Whether you see the Anunnaki as allegory or aliens, their story forces us to confront a haunting possibility. What if humanity's origins are far stranger and far more cosmic than we ever imagined? Rising like artificial mountains across the Mesopotamian plains, the ziggurats of Sumer have long been dismissed as mere temples, places of worship where priests communed with distant deities. But what if these stepped monuments held a far more extraordinary function? Recent reinterpretations of cuneiform texts suggest these structures were engineered not just for ritual, but as conduits between heaven and earth, possibly even as crystalline energy hubs or cosmic beacons. The great ziggurat of with its precise alignment to celestial events, wasn't just symbolically touching the sky. It may have been a literal interface with the divine. The key lies in the Sumerians' obsession with sacred geometry and acoustics. Tablets describe the ziggurat's inner chambers resonating with the sound of the gods, a hum that modern experiments attribute to their unique construction. Layers of bitumen, a natural piezoelectric material sandwiched between conductive metals like copper, suggest these towers could have functioned as massive energy transmitters. Even more compelling, the Enki ziggurat in Babylon was said to draw down the power of Marduk, with ancient accounts describing a shining stone at its apex that emitted light without flame. Sound familiar? It's eerily reminiscent of modern descriptions of plasma or wireless energy transfer. Then there's the celestial connection. Each ziggurat was meticulously aligned with specific star systems, particularly Sirius and Orion, mirroring the Anunnaki's alleged homeworlds. Some researchers argue the staircases weren't just symbolic pathways for priests but functional ramps for beings described as too radiant to climb. Could these structures have been landing platforms or dimensional gateways, as fringe theorists like Erich von Däniken propose? The Sumerians themselves wrote of ziggurats as binding points where gods descended, reinforcing the idea that these weren't passive monuments but active technology. Whether energy amplifiers, cosmic antennas, or something beyond our comprehension, the ziggurats stand as silent witnesses to a knowledge that challenges our view of antiquity's technological limits. Buried within the cracked clay tablets of the Epic of Gilgamesh lies a truth so unsettling, it echoes across 5,000 years of human history. This isn't just the world's oldest written story, it's a warning, a revelation, and perhaps even a blueprint hidden in plain sight. Most retellings focus on Gilgamesh's quest for immortality, but the real shocker is why the gods denied it to him. The ancient text reveals a celestial panic, a moment when the divine council fretted over humanity's rapid growth, whispering, "If we allow Gilgamesh to live forever, what else will he dare to achieve?" Consider the forbidden garden of the gods, where Gilgamesh nearly steals the plant of eternal life. This wasn't just a test of will, it was a deliberate roadblock. The gods didn't fear Gilgamesh's strength or defiance, they feared his potential. Tablet after tablet describes how humanity's ambition unnerved them, how cities like Uruk, with walls gleaming like copper, threatened to eclipse divine supremacy. The irony, Gilgamesh's ultimate failure to secure immortality wasn't a punishment. It was a cosmic safeguard, ensuring humans remained just mortal enough to stay controlled. Yet the epic hints at something even darker. When the gods send the bull of heaven to punish Gilgamesh, the hero doesn't cower, he fights back, slaying the celestial beast in an act of defiance that shook the heavens. This wasn't mere mythology, it was a coded message. The Sumerians weren't just telling a story, they were documenting a celestial power struggle, one where humanity's hunger for knowledge, symbolized by Gilgamesh's relentless quest, posed an existential threat to the established order. Modern parallels are impossible to ignore. From the Tower of Babel myth to Prometheus stealing fire, cultures worldwide echo this primal theme. Gods, or those playing God, jealously guarding secrets that could uplift humanity. But here's what sets the Sumerian version apart. Unlike later myths that frame such ambition as sinful, the Epic of Gilgamesh celebrates it. Even in failure, the hero's name endures, not as a cautionary tale, but as a testament to human audacity. The message, immortality, wasn't lost, it was stolen, and the gods' greatest fear wasn't humanity's weakness, but our inevitable rise. Deep in the ruins of Nippur, Sumer's sacred religious center, archaeologists uncovered something that shouldn't exist: clay tablets filled with schematics so advanced, they defied every assumption about ancient technological capabilities. These weren't just ritual texts or merchant records, They were meticulous diagrams of machines, energy systems, and celestial navigation tools that predate modern equivalents by thousands of years. The most controversial, a device called the Dingir and Kai, described as a sky-measuring orb capable of tracking planetary movements with uncanny precision. Modern engineers who have studied the translations note its striking resemblance to an analog computer, complete with gear ratios that wouldn't be reinvented until the Antikythera mechanism 2 millennia later. But the real mystery lies in what happened to these tablets after their discovery. While mainstream academia dismisses them as allegorical fiction, suppressed reports suggest select pages were immediately classified by early 20th century excavators. A rare surviving passage mentions the fire that flows without burning, a phrase replicated in later Hindu Vimana texts and eerily similar to modern plasma propulsion. Even more chilling, the Nippur tablets reference a catastrophic event called the Great Binding, where the gods deliberately shattered certain technologies to prevent humanity from reaching the abode of the divine. This wasn't just myth-making, it was a warning etched in cuneiform, hinting at a forgotten cycle of technological rise and ruin. The connections grow stranger when you examine similar artifacts across other ancient cultures. A Babylonian cylinder seal depicts a figure holding what looks suspiciously like a handheld device with antennae, while Sumerian reliefs show priests manipulating crystalline objects that emit waves, images that uncannily mirror modern wireless technology. Could these tablets preserve fragments of a once global knowledge system, deliberately erased from history? Researchers like Dr. Joseph Farrell argue the Nippur texts describe principles of electrogravitics and quantum vibration that our science is only now rediscovering. Whether these were divine revelations or remnants of a lost civilization, one thing is clear: someone went to great lengths to ensure this information stayed buried. The question is why. Among the most jaw-dropping revelations in Sumerian mythology is the tale of Enki and Ninmah, a story that reads less like ancient scripture and more like a genetic engineering manual. The texts describe these two deities not merely as gods, but as master biologists laboring in what can only be called a primordial laboratory. According to the Atrahasis tablets, Enki and Ninmah molded the first humans from clay, mixed with the blood of a slain god to create a hybrid workforce. But the shocking detail: they didn't succeed on the first try. The tablets recount a series of failed prototypes, beings with mismatched limbs, uncontrolled fertility, or even no ability to speak before achieving the perfect human model. This isn't just poetic metaphor. Modern geneticists have noted eerie parallels between these ancient accounts and contemporary CRISPR experiments, where precise edits can lead to unintended mutations. Enki's supposed house of shaping, where these trials took place, mirrors the sterile labs of today's biotech facilities, and the blood of the god mixed into clay. Some theorists suggest this could symbolize the introduction of foreign DNA into early hominids, an idea that aligns startlingly with hypotheses about ancient alien intervention. The implications become even more profound when you examine Ninmah's role. Often overshadowed by Enki, she's depicted as a divine midwife, using her knowledge to fix genetic errors in their creations. One passage describes her adjusting the breath of life within flawed specimens, a phrase that echoes modern gene therapy techniques targeting mitochondrial DNA. Could the Sumerians have been documenting an advanced biotechnological event, misinterpreted as divine myth over millennia? Then there's the forbidden knowledge angle. Later texts warn that Enki eventually taught humans how to manipulate their own biology, an act that allegedly angered the other gods. This mirrors global flood myths where deities punish humanity for gaining godlike powers. Whether you view these accounts as allegory or historical record, one thing is undeniable: the Sumerians described genetic tampering with a specificity that defies coincidence. Their myths may hold the key to understanding not just our past, but the future of human evolution itself. buried in the baked clay of the Sumerian King List lies a mathematical impossibility that has baffled historians for centuries. This ancient tablet, discovered across multiple excavation sites, records rulers who supposedly reigned for tens of thousands of years before the Great Flood lifespan so exaggerated, they defy biology, physics, and common sense. Alulim, the first king of Eridu, is said to have ruled for 28,800 years, followed by Alalga's 36,000-year reign. These aren't typos or mistranslations. The scribes meticulously recorded these numbers with the same precision used for historical battles and temple construction. So why would an advanced civilization known for astronomy, law, and engineering perpetuate such obvious fiction? One theory suggests these numbers aren't literal but encode astronomical knowledge. The reigns might represent celestial cycles, with each year corresponding to planetary movements rather than Earth's orbit. For example, 28,800 years aligns closely with the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that completes a full cycle every 25,772 years. This would transform the King List from fantasy into a sophisticated scientific document, hiding advanced cosmology behind the guise of mythology. But the more radical interpretation points to the Anunnaki. Ancient astronaut theorists highlight how the list divides into two distinct sections: the antediluvian kings with impossible lifespans and post-flood rulers with biologically plausible reigns. This abrupt shift coincides with the Mesopotamian flood myth, where the gods are said to have withdrawn from direct rule. Could those preposterous numbers reflect actual extraterrestrial lifespans or timekeeping from the Anunnaki's homeworld? Certain Sumerian texts describe divine years differing from human years, much like the biblical "one day is as 1,000 years" concept. Even mainstream scholars admit the list isn't purely fictional. It meticulously traces dynastic succession across cities like Kish and Ur, with verified archaeological correlations for later rulers. This duality, mixing verifiable history with blatant myth, fuels speculation that the early entries preserve degraded memories of pre-human civilizations or visitors from the stars. Perhaps the scribes, unable to comprehend such timescales, transcribed them verbatim from older sources like the mysterious Silver Library, said to predate the flood. The most haunting possibility, the King List may encode a forgotten truth about cyclical cataclysms. The durations decrease exponentially after the flood, as if marking humanity's gradual loss of longevity, a theme mirrored in other global myths from the Tibetan Zhangzhung kings to the Hebrew patriarchs. Whether symbolic, extraterrestrial, or a warning about lost golden ages, these numbers challenge us to reconsider not just Sumerian history, but the very nature of time itself. Some of the most enigmatic objects in Sumerian mythology aren't towering ziggurats or golden idols. They're small, seemingly ordinary items called the mi. These weren't just ritual objects. They were believed to contain the very essence of divine authority, acting as physical vessels for the god's power. The mi artifacts, described in texts as everything from tiny stone tablets to ornate musical instruments, held the blueprints of civilization itself. One tablet describes Inanna, the goddess of love and war, tricking the god Enki out of dozens of mi, which included everything from kingship and weapon-making to the art of seduction and weaving. Losing them wasn't just symbolic, it meant losing control over the fabric of reality. What makes the mi so fascinating is how they blur the line between myth and technology. Ancient texts describe them emitting light, vibrating with energy, and even responding to specific vocal frequencies, details that sound less like magic and more like advanced machinery. One mi, called the Tablet of Destinies, was said to grant its holder authority over the cosmic order. It's eerily reminiscent of modern encryption keys or access codes, locking and unlocking divine functions. The parallels don't stop there. Some researchers suggest the me might represent early AI interfaces or even quantum data storage, with their activation through ritual chants mirroring voice-controlled tech we're only now developing. But the real mystery is their disappearance. Unlike other Sumerian artifacts, no physical me have ever been found, just descriptions in texts. Some scholars argue they were destroyed in religious purges, while fringe theorists claim they were taken, either hidden by secret societies or recovered by the very gods who left them behind. Their absence raises a provocative question. If the me were real, what would happen if we found one today? Could these ancient objects, dismissed as myth, still hold power we don't understand? Whether symbolic or supernatural, the me force us to confront the unsettling idea that some secrets of Sumer might have been deliberately erased, not lost to time but taken. The concept of Kur, the Sumerian underworld, shatters everything we assume about ancient afterlife beliefs. Unlike shadowy realms of punishment or reward found in later religions, Kur was described as a tangible, almost geographical location, a place not just for the dead, but for the living to visit under extraordinary circumstances. Texts refer to it with the same concrete language used for cities like or Nippur, complete with detailed itineraries, gates guarded by actual beings, and even a ferry system across the subterranean sea. This wasn't some abstract spiritual domain, it was a destination. Consider the harrowing journey of the goddess Inanna, who descended through Kur's 7 gates, stripped of her divine symbols at each threshold until she stood naked before its rulers. The specificity is staggering. Each gate had a name, a guardian, and precise rituals for passage. Later accounts describe heroes like Gilgamesh traveling there to consult the dead, noting the air was thick but breathable, the landscape dotted with strange flora, and the inhabitants existing in a state between life and death. These aren't the hallmarks of myth. They read like expedition logs. Modern parallels leap out. Some theorists point to the massive underground city of Derinkuyu in Turkey, a labyrinth extending nearly 300 feet beneath the earth, as potential proof that ancient cultures knew of and perhaps cohabited with subterranean civilizations. Others highlight the recurring global motif of Hollow Earth legends, from Tibetan stories of Agartha to the Hopi tales of the Ant people. But the most radical interpretation comes from cuneiform scholars who note that Kur was often called the foreign land, a phrase that could imply not just underground but elsewhere. The description of its ruler, Ereshkigal, as a being who never sees the light of the sun, takes on new meaning if Kur wasn't beneath us but in deep space, a planet locked in eternal darkness. The clincher, Sumerian astronomy tablets place Kur's entrance in the Western Mountains, the same region where Mesopotamians believed the sun vanished each night. This precise celestial alignment suggests they may have viewed the underworld as a literal cosmic counterpart, perhaps a twin Earth or a rogue planet. Even mainstream archaeologists admit some Kur descriptions match geological phenomena, molten rivers mirroring lava tubes, echoing chambers resembling vast cavern systems. Whether a lost subterranean world, a forgotten colony, or a metaphor for something beyond our grasp, Kur forces us to reconsider how literally we should take these ancient accounts. After all, if the underworld was real, what else might be? Before the dawn of human toil, the heavens themselves trembled with revolt. The Ijigi, Sumer's forgotten middle class of gods, were the original laborers tasked with maintaining the cosmic order under the Anunnaki's rule. Ancient texts describe them dredging rivers, repairing celestial pathways, and hauling resources in a divine assembly line, their endless work echoing the drudgery of later human serfs. But unlike the myths of other cultures where gods reign unquestioned, the Ijigi did something extraordinary. They staged the first recorded strike in history. The Atrahasis tablet recounts their uprising with startling detail. After 2,400 years of backbreaking labor, the Ijigi burned their tools, surrounded the great temple of Enlil, and shouted into the halls of power, "We will no longer be your oxen." This wasn't just divine drama, it was a labor movement etched in clay, a rebellion so fierce it forced the Anunnaki to rethink their entire system. The parallels to human history are chilling. Like the peasant revolts of medieval Europe or the union strikes of the industrial age, the Igigis' protest exposed the fragility of power structures built on exploitation. What happened next reshaped humanity's destiny. Facing a total shutdown of divine operations, the Anunnaki convened an emergency council. Enki, the cleverest of the gods, proposed a radical solution: create a new slave race to replace the Igigi. Thus, humans were engineered not out of benevolence, but as scab labor, biological substitutes to absorb the workload. The bitter irony: the very beings crafted to end divine rebellion would later echo the Igigis' defiance from the Tower of Babel to modern workers' rights movements. The Igigis' legacy lingers in cryptic details. Some texts suggest they weren't just pacified, they were promoted. A handful ascended to higher roles, while others became overseers of humanity, their resentment seeping into myths of capricious lesser gods. Their rebellion reveals a truth more profound than myth. Even the divine hierarchy trembled when the workers united. Whether read as allegory or ancient reportage, the Igigis' revolt forces us to ask who really built civilization: the gods at the top or the forgotten hands that refused to break? Beneath the windswept dunes of southern Iraq lies a silent witness to humanity's first footsteps into civilization: Eridu, the city that shouldn't exist. According to the Sumerian King List, this wasn't just another ancient settlement. It was the very first city, founded by the gods themselves and ruled by Enki, the deity of wisdom and waters, before the Great Flood reshaped the world. Excavations reveal something astonishing. Eridu's foundations date back to 5400 BC, making it older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, older than any known metropolis on Earth. But its true significance isn't just its age, it's what was kept there. The Temple of Eridu, called the Abzu, wasn't just a place of worship. Texts describe it as Enki's personal laboratory, a house of far-reaching knowledge where the secrets of agriculture, law, and even architecture were first bestowed upon humanity. One tablet recounts how Enki filled the Abzu with the me of all things, those enigmatic objects holding divine blueprints we discussed earlier. This wasn't just myth. Archaeologists found evidence of Eridu's sudden leap from primitive huts to advanced urban planning, complete with irrigation systems and zoning laws, as if the city skipped centuries of trial and error overnight. Then there's the mystery of Eridu's water. Unlike other Mesopotamian cities built along rivers, Eridu arose around a sprawling freshwater aquifer, which the Sumerians called the Abzu, the cosmic underground ocean where Enki dwelled. Recent satellite imaging shows the ruins align with this aquifer's contours like a circuit board, suggesting the water wasn't just a resource but part of the city's sacred technology. Even stranger, core samples reveal layers of sediment matching descriptions of a catastrophic flood, not just locally but across Mesopotamia. Could Eridu have been the prototype for all later cities, a divine experiment preserved in flood myths worldwide? The most chilling clue lies in what didn't survive. Early excavators reported finding a vault beneath the temple, sealed and empty, its walls scorched as if by tremendous heat. Sumerian texts hint that this chamber once held the tablets of destiny, artifacts granting control over time itself. Whether looted, hidden, or reclaimed by the gods, their absence speaks volumes. Eridu wasn't abandoned, it was stripped, its knowledge scattered or suppressed. Today, the site lies eerily dormant, as if waiting for someone or something to reactivate its forgotten purpose. Standing in its ruins, you can almost hear the whisper of Enki's parting warning: what was given can be taken away. Long before scholars and kings ruled Sumer, wisdom flowed from the most unexpected of teachers, the Apkallu, 7 amphibious sages who emerged from the waters of the Abzu with knowledge that ignited human civilization. These weren't ordinary mentors, described as part human, part fish. They moved between realms, their very existence blurring the line between myth and biological possibility. Cuneiform tablets depict them with scaly skin, webbed hands, and elongated heads, carrying buckets of what scholars once assumed was ritual water, until modern translations suggested these vessels held something far more potent, the genetic essence of creation itself. The Apkallu's curriculum reads like a crash course in civilization building. They taught architecture, medicine, and astronomy, but their most profound gift was the art of divination, interpreting cosmic patterns to predict calamities. This wasn't mere superstition. Their warnings about an impending global flood, preserved in the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Atrahasis tablets, align with geological evidence of massive inundations around 7,500 years ago. The correlation is too precise to dismiss. From Mesopotamia to the Mayans, cultures worldwide recount fishmen sages appearing before cataclysms, sharing blueprints for survival. The Babylonian Berossus even names the last Apkallu, Ons, who allegedly taught humans to cease living like beasts before retreating to the sea as the waters rose. What cements their mystery are the artifacts. Excavations at Nineveh revealed stone reliefs showing the Apkallu holding pinecone-shaped objects, a motif repeated in Assyrian art and, inexplicably, centuries later in Vatican courtyards. Some researchers believe these cones symbolized the pineal gland, representing enlightenment, while others argue they were tools for energy manipulation. Even more compelling, the Apkallu's fish skin cloaks mirror the bioluminescent Chinese letter suits worn by modern deep-sea divers, hinting at an aquatic origin we've yet to comprehend. The darkest twist lies in their disappearance. After the flood, texts describe the Apkallu as corrupted, their teachings distorted by human ambition. Later kings claim descent from them, twisting their wisdom into tools of control. Yet whispers persist that not all return to the depths. Some tablets speak of Apkallu hybrids walking among us, their bloodlines carrying fragments of forgotten knowledge. Whether ancient astronauts, advanced hybrids, or custodians of a lost aquatic civilization, their legacy forces a haunting question. Did they come to save us or to warn us about what we might become? Among the most explosive theories about Sumerian civilization is the claim that they not only understood space travel but possibly witnessed or even participated in it. The evidence begins with their astronomical accuracy. While ancient cultures tracked celestial events, the Sumerians went further, mapping planetary orbits with precision that shouldn't have been possible without telescopes. Their descriptions of Jupiter's moons, Saturn's rings, and Neptune's blue hue, all invisible to the naked eye, suggest knowledge passed down from an advanced source. But the smoking gun lies in their iconography. A carved cylinder seal, now housed in the Berlin Museum, depicts a distinct conical object hovering above a ziggurat, flanked by figures in what appear to be pressurized suits. The design is uncannily reminiscent of modern rocket launches, complete with exhaust plumes and stabilization fins. Equally compelling are the textual clues. The Epic of Etana, one of Sumer's oldest surviving narratives, tells of a king carried skyward by a divine eagle to witness Earth, shrinking below like a basket in the river. The descriptions are startlingly specific: the curvature of the horizon, the blackness of space, and even the thinning of breath, details no Bronze Age writer could invent without first-hand experience. Later Akkadian texts describe the Shamash Kakabu, or sun rocket, a vehicle said to traverse the upper vault with a roar like 1,000 storms. Skeptics dismiss these as poetic metaphors, but when paired with Sumerian math like their base 60 numeral system still used in modern astronomy, the coincidences pile up. Then there's the Baalbek connection, the colossal stone platform in Lebanon, whose origins baffle archaeologists, was known to the Sumerians as the landing place of the gods. Texts from Eridu mention a shining path stretching from Baalbek's megaliths to the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, possibly marking an ancient flight corridor. Modern aerospace engineers who have studied the site note its flatness rivals modern runways, with stones so precisely cut they could support heavy vertical launches without cracking. The most chilling evidence, however, comes from the vocabulary itself. Sumerian terms like din-gur, usually translated as gods, literally break down to the righteous ones of the rockets. Their word for planet was Lumashi, meaning moving beacon, while Elil, later the name of a chief deity, originally described a wind from above that propels. Even the concept of heaven wasn't some spiritual realm, it was the Enki, a compound word meaning where earth and sky meet, the very definition of a space boundary. Whether these were records of actual technology or remnants of a lost science, one thing is clear. The Sumerians spoke of the cosmos not as distant observers, but as if they, or their gods, had once walked among the stars. The wedge-shaped marks of cuneiform hide far more than royal decrees and grain inventories. Encoded within these ancient symbols may lie secrets so profound they challenge our very understanding of human history. While mainstream archaeology views cuneiform as the world's first writing system, a closer examination reveals anomalies that hint at something far stranger. Take the Kish tablet, dating back to 3500 BCE. On its surface, it records simple economic transactions, but when certain glyphs are isolated and rearranged using a pattern found in later Sumerian mathematical texts, they form equations describing planetary motion with eerie accuracy. How could a civilization just emerging from the Stone Age calculate orbital velocities without telescopes? Even more compelling are the ghost glyphs, symbols pressed so lightly into clay that they're invisible without angled light, yet appear consistently across tablets from Lagash to Ur. These faint markings don't match any known cuneiform lexicon. Some researchers, like linguist Dr. Helena Petrovna, argue they form a parallel script, a shadow language possibly used by temple initiates to record forbidden knowledge. One recurring cluster, when translated tentatively using cryptographic methods, appears to describe a path between stars and a gate that consumes light. The latter bears unsettling resemblance to modern descriptions of black holes. Then there's the numerical cipher. Sumerian math operated on a base 60 system, ideal for celestial calculations, but certain tablets embed prime numbers within apparently mundane accounts. When mapped three-dimensionally, these primes correspond to the exact coordinates of Sirius, Orion's belt, and the Pleiades as they would have appeared in 3400 BC. Coincidence, perhaps, until you examine the Nimrod lens, a crystal artifact unearthed near cuneiform archives. Once dismissed as decorative, optical analysis proves it could focus sunlight into a beam precise enough to etch those tiny ghost glyphs. Was this lens part of a larger device for encoding or decoding messages beyond human perception? The most provocative evidence comes from the Library of Ashurbanipal, where a fire-scorched tablet references a speaking stone that recited texts when awakened. Similar devices appear in multiple Mesopotamian myths, always linked to the Anunnaki. Modern experiments using vibrational frequencies on quartz-rich clay have produced unexpected piezoelectric effects, suggesting these speaking stones might not have been metaphorical. If cuneiform wasn't just a writing system, but a resonant technology designed to store information acoustically or holographically, it would explain why certain tablets were stored in pitch-black vaults lined with copper. The chilling implication: we may have only translated the surface layer. Like a Mesopotamian Rosetta Stone waiting to be cracked, the full truth of cuneiform could lie buried in its structure, not just its symbols. The scribes who pressed these wedges into clay might have been cryptographers, safeguarding truths too dangerous for their time, or ours. At first glance, the love story of Inanna and Dumuzid seems like a classic divine romance, the passionate goddess of love and war entwined with the handsome shepherd god. But peel back the golden veneer and you'll find a tale so twisted it redefines betrayal, mortality, and the brutal price of power. Their myth isn't just a tragedy, it's a chilling exposé of divine politics where love is a weapon and devotion a death sentence. The horror begins with Inanna's descent into the underworld, a journey we've touched on before. But what most retellings omit is this: before she left, she made Dumuzid swear an oath to mourn her if she didn't return. Yet when Inanna finally escapes Ker thanks to a deal that forces her to send a substitute in her place, she finds Dumuzid not weeping, but lounging on her throne, clad in her sacred regalia, reveling in her absence. The betrayal cuts deeper than mere infidelity. In Sumerian society, the throne wasn't just a seat, it was the literal embodiment of divine authority. Dumuzid hadn't just moved on, he'd staged a coup. What happens next shatters any illusion of tenderness. Enraged, Inanna hands him over to the Gala demons, sentencing him to 6 months of torment in the underworld each year. But here's the twist: this wasn't just vengeance. Texts from Nippur reveal that Dumuzid's cyclical death and resurrection were engineered to maintain balance. His suffering mirrored the agricultural cycle's growth, harvest, decay, making him less a lover and more a sacrificial pawn in Inanna's grand design. The same tablets describe her watching impassively as the demons drag him away, her face hard as polished lapis. Yet the darkest layer lies in the myth subtext. Dumuzid's sister, Inanna, voluntarily shares his sentence, trading places with him every 6 months out of love. Inanna, by contrast, offers no such mercy. Their dynamic flips traditional gender roles, casting the goddess not as a victim of passion, but as a ruthless sovereign who weaponizes intimacy. Even more disturbing, later Babylonian versions hint that Dumuzid's betrayal might have been staged, a pretext to justify his ritual sacrifice, ensuring the land's fertility through his blood. This isn't just ancient soap opera. The myth encodes a terrifying truth about Sumerian cosmology. Love and pain were two sides of the same coin, and even the gods couldn't escape the machinery of fate. Dumuzid's cries as the demons take him, "You've changed me into a ghost," echo far beyond myth. They whisper of a world where devotion could be lethal, and where the goddess of love herself understood that to rule, sometimes you must destroy the thing you cherish most. The most startling truth about Sumerian mythology isn't that their gods walked among humans, it's that these so-called deities bled, starved, and fell in battle just like mortals. The sacred texts pull no punches. These weren't omnipotent beings, but flesh and blood figures with all the flaws and frailties of their human subjects. Take Enlil, the mighty air god who ruled the divine assembly. When the city of Nippur rebelled against his temple taxes, tablets describe him trembling behind his ziggurats walls, sending frantic messages to other gods for military support. This isn't the behavior of an all-powerful creator, it's the desperation of a warlord clinging to power. Then there's Inanna's infamous humiliation in the underworld. Stripped naked and hung on a meat hook for 3 days, the goddess of love writhed in agony until her loyal servant negotiated her release. The graphic account includes her crying out for water and begging for mercy, scenes that would be blasphemous in later religions. Even more revealing, the death of Dumuzid, whose corpse was left rotting in the sun until maggots swarmed his eyes, according to the lamentation poems. These aren't metaphors, they're clinical descriptions of mortality. The real smoking gun comes from the food offerings. Temples meticulously recorded the gods' daily meals: barley cakes, roasted meats, and honeyed beer in quantities that would feed an army. Why would immortals need sustenance? One Lhasa tablet even complains that the god Utu grew weak when drought disrupted his bread supply. Modern scholars like Gwendolyn Lake argue this proves the gods were originally deified ancestors or chieftains whose cults demanded literal nourishment. But the most damning evidence lies in their deaths. The Sumerian King List matter of factly states that the god King Etana ascended to heaven, only for later texts to confess he plummeted to earth when his divine eagle failed. Another tablet recounts the water god Enki becoming gravely ill, his ribs rotting until the healing goddess Ninti performed what reads like primitive surgery. These accounts share more with medical reports than holy scripture. Perhaps the most revealing moment comes from the Epic of Error, where the warrior god Ira drunkenly boasts about his past battles, only to break down weeping when reminded of his mortal wounds. This raw humanity forces us to ask, were the Anunnaki ever truly gods or merely beings so advanced their technology seemed supernatural? Their hunger, their pain, their petty rivalries, they mirror our own struggles too closely for comfort. In the end, Sumerian mythology's greatest secret might be that divinity was never about perfection, but about power's fleeting, fragile nature. Deep beneath the ziggurats, where torchlight flickered against walls inscribed with forbidden symbols, the Sumerian priesthood performed rituals so profound they blurred the line between worship and interdimensional travel. These weren't simple prayers or sacrifices, they were precise, almost scientific ceremonies designed to breach the veil between worlds. At the heart of these rites lay the use of sacred entheogens, psychoactive substances extracted from blue water lilies and a mysterious plant called soma, which priests ingested to open the eyes of the soul. Tablets from Eridu detail recipes for hallucinogenic brews so potent, they allegedly allowed direct communion with the Anunnaki, inducing visions described as walking through the gate of the gods. The mechanics of these rituals were chillingly specific. Priests would isolate in soundproof chambers lined with copper, a metal now known to amplify electromagnetic frequencies, chanting mantras at precise harmonic intervals. The demurgal, a sacred instrument resembling a lyre with 7 strings tuned to planetary frequencies, accompanied these incantations. Texts describe participants experiencing the lifting of the veil, where the chamber walls would seemingly dissolve, revealing corridors of light and entities shining like polished bronze. Modern researchers like John Marco Allegro theorized these accounts might describe genuine altered states induced by acoustic resonance combined with psychoactive drugs, creating a form of technologically enhanced shamanism. But the most unsettling detail emerges from the Ura equals Hubulu, a Babylonian compendium of ritual objects. It lists a device called the gizkim, a crystalline lens used to focus moonlight onto a priest's third eye during ceremonies. When archaeologists recreated this setup using quartz lenses found in temple ruins, they discovered the refracted light produced brainwave patterns consistent with deep trance states. Even more bizarre, several priests' graves contained elongated skulls with subtle cranial modifications, evidence of deliberate shaping, perhaps to enhance receptivity to these otherworldly frequencies. The ultimate goal of these rituals wasn't just vision-seeking, it was interdimensional travel. The Me List, a tablet cataloging divine powers, includes an entry for the crossing of the Abzu, described as a technique to step outside time. One fragmented text from Nippur recounts a high priest named Enlil-Mashu disappearing before witnesses during a ceremony, only to reappear days later clutching sand from a desert where the sun stood still. Whether these were metaphysical experiences, advanced physics, or collective hallucinations remains debated. But one thing is certain, the Sumerian priesthood didn't just worship the gods. They engineered methods to reach them, leaving behind clues that challenge our understanding of consciousness itself. The myth of Adapa reads less like an ancient legend and more like a confiscation report from some celestial patent office. This half-human, half-divine sage wasn't just wise. He possessed something called the Tablet of Destinies, a device described with uncanny technological precision. Texts from the library of Ashurbanipal depict it as a shimmering slab that could command the winds and fix the courses of stars, its surface covered in pulsating symbols that rearranged themselves like some primordial touchscreen. When Adapa used it to calm storms or predict eclipses, the gods didn't applaud his ingenuity, they panicked. What makes this story so explosive is the moment when Anu, king of the gods, summons Adapa to heaven under false pretenses. The young inventor arrives clutching his device, only to be ambushed by a divine SWAT team. The confiscation scene is chilling in its specificity. Enki, Adapa's creator god, had warned him to expect hospitality, but instead, guards pin his arms as Anu pries the tablet from his grasp, snarling, "This is not for the hands of the unperfected." The parallels to modern tech suppression are jaw-dropping, like a Bronze Age version of Tesla's wireless energy patents being seized by vested interests. But here's where it gets weirder. The tablet didn't just vanish. Later texts describe it being disassembled in the House of Heaven's mechanics, its components redistributed to various deities. One fragment became Marduk's eye that sees all, another powered Inanna's war chariot, and a third was allegedly embedded in the foundation of Babylon's Ishtar Gate, echoes of which survived in Jewish mysticism as the broken tablets hidden beneath the Temple Mount. Modern engineers analyzing the descriptions suspect Adapa's device might have been a harmonic resonator. The commanding winds could reference acoustic levitation, while fixing star courses suggests celestial navigation capabilities. Even more tantalizing, a recently deciphered fragment from Sippar mentions the tablet emitting a hum that made bones tremble, a detail matching the low-frequency vibrations used in today's experimental tractor beams. The darkest twist comes from Adapa's fate. Unlike Prometheus, who was tortured for stealing fire, Adapa wasn't punished, he was bribed. Offered immortality to keep quiet, he accepted, becoming the god's court scientist. His story isn't just about lost technology, it's a warning about how power co-opts innovation. The Sumerians didn't record this myth to marvel at divine might. They preserved it as a cautionary tale. Progress isn't forbidden because it's dangerous because it threatens those who claim the right to control it. The constellations we recognize today as the zodiac didn't originate with the Greeks or Babylonians. They were meticulously charted by Sumerian astronomers thousands of years earlier, encoded with knowledge that shouldn't have been possible without advanced tools. Hidden within the world's oldest surviving star maps, carved into clay tablets from the 3rd millennium BCE, are precise celestial coordinates that reveal an unnerving grasp of cosmic mechanics. The Sumerians didn't just name star patterns, they tracked the slow wobble of Earth's axis, a phenomenon called precession, with accuracy that would take modern science centuries to replicate. Their star catalogues, like the Mul-Apin tablets, divide the sky into 12 segments, each corresponding to a zodiacal constellation, but with a crucial difference. Where later cultures saw static symbols, the Sumerians described these regions as dynamic, celestial houses, shifting over vast cycles of time. They calculated precession at roughly 72 years per degree, a figure off by less than 1% from today's measurements. Even more astonishing, their zodiac wasn't based on the sun's path but on the moon's, with each house linked to specific lunar phases and planetary alignments. This wasn't astrology as we know it, it was a mathematical framework for predicting cosmic events with engineering precision. The real shock comes when you examine their celestial iconography. The Sumerian Bull of Heaven, later Taurus, wasn't just a rustic symbol, it marked the vernal equinox around 4500 BCE, when the sun actually rose in that constellation. Their great twins, Gemini, aligned with the brightest stars in galactic longitude, while the scales, Libra, represented the autumnal balance between day and night. These weren't arbitrary myths, they were functional labels for navigation and timekeeping, embedded with data on solstices, eclipses, and even planetary retrograde cycles. But the most chilling evidence lies in what they didn't record. Later zodiacs included 13 constellations like Ophiuchus, yet the Sumerians consistently worked with 12. Why? Because their system wasn't about symbolism, it was a calendar. 12 lunar months fit neatly into their base 60 math, allowing them to synchronize earthly harvests with celestial events. Their Age of the Fish, heralded by the constellation Ku, didn't prophesy spiritual renewal. It warned of seasonal floods when that group of stars dominated the night sky. The implications ripple outward. If the Sumerians could track precession, a cycle spanning 26,000 years, they likely inherited this knowledge from even older sources. Their zodiac wasn't just a map of the heavens, it was a legacy, a whisper from a lost epoch when someone, somewhere, first decoded the language of the stars. Whether that knowledge came from the Anunnaki or an unknown precursor civilization, one thing is certain: humanity's oldest horoscopes weren't about fate. They were about survival, written in the only language that endures, the turning of the sky itself. Beneath the epic tales of Sumerian gods lies a secret war so brutal it altered the course of human history, the millennia-long feud between Enlil and Enki. These half-brothers weren't just divine figures, they were opposing forces locked in a cosmic power struggle, with humanity as their pawn. While Enlil, god of storms and order, sought to control and suppress mankind, Enki, the cunning lord of waters and wisdom, repeatedly defied him, arming us with knowledge that threatened the divine hierarchy. Their conflict wasn't waged with swords, but with floods, plagues, and stolen technologies, a shadow war etched into clay tablets as warnings for future generations. The first act of their battle erupted over the Great Flood. Tablets from Nippur describe Enlil convening the Divine Council, demanding humanity's extermination for becoming too noisy, too numerous. But Enki, in open defiance, leaked the plan to the righteous king Ziggurats, the Sumerian Noah, instructing him to build an ark through coded whispers, later mirrored in biblical accounts. This wasn't just salvation, it was sabotage. Enki's actions preserved the very species Enlil sought to erase, setting the stage for an even greater rebellion. Their rivalry escalated over the forbidden gift of civilization. While Enlil hoarded divine knowledge within temple walls, Enki smuggled it out, teaching humans agriculture, metalwork, and medicine. The Atrahasis tablets reveal Enki's most audacious act, reprogramming human DNA to enhance intelligence, a crime so severe the other gods bound him in chains. Yet, even imprisoned, his influence seeped into the world. The city of Eridu, Enki's stronghold, became a hub of innovation where priests preserved his stolen wisdom in cuneiform codes. The conflict's darkest chapter unfolded over kingship. Enlil favored authoritarian rule, installing puppet monarchs to enforce divine will. Enki, however, engineered the rise of Gilgamesh, a king so bold he challenged the gods themselves. When Enlil sent the Bull of Heaven to punish Yorok's arrogance, it was Enki's covert guidance that helped Gilgamesh slay the beast, a symbolic strike against celestial tyranny. But here's the twist: their war may never have ended. Later texts describe Enki constructing hidden chambers beneath ziggurats, stocked with artifacts, his contingency plan for humanity's next uprising. Meanwhile, Enlil's priesthood systematically purged Enki's name from records, rewriting history to paint him as a trickster rather than a liberator. This whitewashing was so effective, even modern scholars often misinterpret their dynamic. The legacy of their feud pulses through human culture. From Prometheus stealing fire to Lucifer's fall, these archetypes echo Enki's rebellion. His greatest victory wasn't a battle won, but a seed planted. The unshakable idea that knowledge belongs to all, not just the gods who hoard it. In the end, their struggle poses a haunting question. Were we ever mere pawns, or were we Enki's ultimate weapon? The Abzu wasn't just Enki's watery lair. It might have been the Sumerians' version of a stargate, a shimmering portal bridging worlds. Unlike later myths depicting underworlds as gloomy pits, the Abzu was described in tablets as a radiant, liquid expanse, a place where waters mingled with the fires of heaven. At its heart lay the Apsu stone, a crystalline object said to pulse with light and emit a song that could part the waters. Those who entered didn't drown, they transformed. Texts from Eridu tell of priests emerging from the Abzu speaking unfamiliar languages, their skin glowing faintly for days, their memories filled with cities that floated on clouds. The mechanics of this alleged portal are shockingly specific. Tablets describe rituals where priests would anoint themselves with a metallic oil, possibly a conductor, before submerging in the Abzu's central pool at precise celestial alignments. The water itself wasn't ordinary, it was heavy water, a term modern scientists use for deuterium-enriched liquid used in nuclear reactors, even more bizarre. The Abzu stone was said to vibrate at frequencies that opened the path, causing the waters to spiral into a funnel. Witnesses reported seeing doors within the depths, beyond which lay landscapes with many suns and towers that touched the sky. Some researchers, like author William Henry, argue the Abzu's descriptions match theoretical physics concepts like Einstein-Rosen bridges. The metal-lined tunnels leading to it, still visible in Eridu's ruins, align electromagnetically with underground aquifers, natural conductors that could theoretically stabilize a wormhole. Meanwhile, the heavy water might have acted as a medium for quantum tunneling, a process where particles traverse barriers instantaneously. But the most haunting clue lies in what happened to those who failed the crossing. Failed initiates were said to return broken, their bodies twisted, their minds babbling about the space between spaces. One fragmented tablet from warns, "Not all who enter the Abzu return whole," suggesting the portal wasn't just a myth, it was a dangerous technology. Whether interdimensional gateway, alien transit system, or a metaphor for consciousness expansion, the Abzu remains Sumer's most tantalizing secret. Its waters may have long since dried up, but the question lingers: what or who was coming through from the other side? Among the most hotly debated mysteries of Sumerian cosmology is Nibiru, a celestial body described not as a mere planet, but as a roving, rogue world with an orbit so vast it only returns to our solar system once every 3,600 years. The Babylonians called it Marduk, the Greeks knew it as Phaeton, but the Sumerians left the most chilling accounts. Their tablets depict it as a great star with crimson wings, an entity that disrupts the fixed order whenever it approaches. But what exactly was Nibiru, a hidden planet, a metaphor for cyclical destruction, or something far more unsettling? The evidence begins with the astronomical precision of the Enuma Elish, where Nibiru's arrival coincides with celestial upheaval, planets shifting orbits, waters boiling, and the binding cords of heaven snapping like frayed ropes. Modern astronomers note these descriptions align eerily with hypothetical planetary collisions, like the one believed to have formed Earth's moon. Yet the Sumerians didn't just predict chaos, they named Nibiru the crossing point, a world that determines destinies as it passes. This wasn't a random cataclysm, it was a scheduled reckoning, a cosmic checkpoint written into the fabric of their calendar. But here's where it gets stranger. Certain tablets, like the Astrolabe B text, place Nibiru in a polar orbit perpendicular to our solar system's plane, a trajectory no natural planet follows. Even more baffling, Sumerian star maps mark its path with symbols identical to those used for the Anunnaki's celestial boats, suggesting Nibiru wasn't just a world, it was a vessel. Zecharia Sitchin's controversial interpretation takes this further, proposing Nibiru as the Anunnaki's mothership, a nomadic planet engineered for interstellar travel. While mainstream science dismisses this, researchers like Dr. Robert Harrington of the U.S. Naval Observatory once theorized a Planet X with an eccentric orbit matching Sumerian descriptions. The spiritual angle can't be ignored either. In the Exaltation of Inanna, the goddess claims Nibiru as her lofty throne, a place where time moves differently. This mirrors Hindu descriptions of Devaloka, where a day lasts a human year. Could Nibiru have been a dimensional bridge rather than a physical locale? Some Gnostic texts found near Nag Hammadi describe a red realm where the Archon's demiurgic rulers reside, echoing Sumerian warnings about Nibiru's fiery net ensnaring souls. The most chilling theory comes from the Era epos, where the god Era linked to Nibiru boasts of wielding a scorching weapon that left Babylon in ruins. Clay cylinders from Nineveh describe its effects in horrifying detail. Shadows burned into walls, rivers evaporating instantly, and survivors' hair falling out, symptoms unnervingly reminiscent of nuclear fallout. Whether Nibiru was a planet, a warship, or a metaphor for divine wrath, one thing is clear: the Sumerians didn't just fear its return. They prepared for it, building ziggurats as cosmic anchors and encoding warnings in their star charts. Today, as astronomers hunt for Planet 9 in our solar system's outer reaches, the line between myth and science grows thinner. The Sumerians may have left us more than just stories. They might have handed down a survival manual written in the language of the stars. And if Nibiru is real, its next crossing could rewrite human history or end it. Hidden in the cracked clay of the Epic of Era lies a description so precise, it chills the blood, an ancient weapon of such unimaginable power, it could level cities in an instant. The text details a device called the Shikuru, wielded by the war god Era, capable of sending a wind that melts mountains and leaving behind a poison no healer can cure. The parallels to modern weapons are impossible to ignore. Witnesses described flashes brighter than the sun, buildings reduced to glass like slag, and survivors whose skin fell like rotten cloth, symptoms eerily similar to radiation sickness millennia before Hiroshima. But this wasn't some mythical allegory. The level of technical detail is staggering. Tablets from Babylon describe the weapon's operation with terrifying specificity. A hollow rod channeling vibrations from the Earth's veins to produce a beam that scorched paths straight as a surveyor's line. Modern physicists note the description mirrors principles of directed energy, weapons, particle beams, or lasers that our militaries are only now developing. Even more unsettling, the hollow rod might reference a resonant cavity, a key component in maser technology. The aftermath narratives read like nuclear winter reports. One account from Sippar tells of crops failing for 7 years, of birds dropping dead mid-flight, and water sources glowing faintly at night. These weren't poetic flourishes, they match the environmental impact of radiological contamination. The ancient scribes even recorded a grim detail modern science confirms. Those who took refuge underground survived, while those outdoors were burned from within. Perhaps most disturbing is the weapon's alleged source. The texts claim it was a gift from Marduk, chief god of Babylon, who stole its design from the treasury of Anu. This theft motif echoes through multiple cultures, from Prometheus taking fire to the Hindu Vimana manuals describing aerial weapons too terrible to use. The Sumerians didn't see this as divine wrath. They framed it as technological escalation in a celestial arms race. Archaeology adds chilling weight to these accounts. At Nineveh, excavations revealed a stratum of fused green glass identical to trinitite formed by nuclear tests beneath layers dating to 2100 BC. Nearby, skeletons show radiation levels 40 times normal, their postures frozen in sudden, instinctive flight. The ultimate question isn't whether these weapons existed, but why they were deployed. The Epic of Era gives a disturbingly modern answer: politics. Era used the Shikuru not to punish wickedness, but to silence dissent when Babylon dared question divine authority. In that single act, the Sumerians warned us, technology in the wrong hands doesn't civilize, it annihilates. Few rituals in ancient Sumer carried the weight or the mystery of the sacred marriage, the Hieros Gamos. This wasn't just a symbolic ceremony, it was a high-stakes act of cosmic engineering where the king himself would ritually wed the goddess Inanna, channeling divine energy to renew the land's fertility and maintain the fragile balance between heaven and earth. The details preserved on tablets from Ur and Yurok reveal a spectacle so intense it blurred the line between theater and transcendental magic. The king, representing Dumuzid, Inanna's doomed lover, would ascend the ziggurate's innermost chamber where a priestess embodying the goddess awaited. But this was no mere act of political theater. The union was believed to unleash a tangible force, what the Sumerians called a pulse of creative energy that rippled through crops, herds, and even the stars themselves. What makes this ritual truly unsettling are the physiological descriptions. Texts describe the participants consuming a hallucinogenic brew called kash-shaji, a concoction of blue lotus, barley, and an unknown heart of heaven herb. Under its influence, the couple would recite verses in a language called Emezal, a dialect reserved solely for divine communication. Witnesses reported the chamber filling with an eerie luminescence, the air humming as if charged with static. Then came the act itself, not just a symbolic gesture, but a literal union, timed to the rising of Venus, Inanna's celestial counterpart. The king's successful performance was thought to ensure prosperity. Failure risked famine, war, or even the gods' withdrawal from the world. The Hieros Gomos wasn't just about fertility, it was about power. By binding himself to Inanna, the king didn't just secure harvests, he cemented his divine right to rule. Tablets from Lagash hint at darker undertones, suggesting some kings didn't survive the ritual. One fragmented account describes a ruler burning from within after the ceremony, his body collapsing into ashes before the altar. Was this poetic metaphor or evidence of something more sinister, an ancient energy transfer gone wrong? The ritual's legacy endured long after Sumer's fall, morphing into the sacred marriages of Ishtar and Tammuz in Babylon, and even influencing the bridal mysticism of medieval Europe. But the most provocative clue lies in what the Hieros Gomos didn't include. Unlike later fertility rites, there were no public celebrations, no feasts for the masses. This was a closed-door operation, witnessed only by high priests who afterward transcribed the events in coded cuneiform. The secrecy suggests the ritual wasn't just spiritual, it was technical, a precise method for tapping into forces modern science might barely comprehend. Whether it was psychotropic communion, a forgotten energy ritual, or something far stranger, the sacred marriage remains Sumer's most enigmatic act of devotion, one where love wasn't just a feeling, but a force strong enough to bend the universe. The Sumerians didn't just track time, they bent it to their will, crafting calendars so precise they could predict celestial events thousands of years in advance. Unlike the crude lunar cycles of their neighbors, their system was a masterpiece of synchronization, weaving together the movements of planets, stars, and even the slow wobble of Earth's axis. At its heart lay the Nippur calendar, a complex web of interlocking cycles that divided the year into 360 days, each further split into 12 months of 30 days, a structure so elegant it still underpins our geometry and timekeeping today. But this wasn't just about planting seasons or religious festivals. The Sumerians believed time itself was a living force, a river they could navigate with the right tools. Their star maps reveal an obsession with planetary alignments, particularly the orbits of Venus and Jupiter, which they linked to the rise and fall of dynasties. Tablets from Ur describe a recurring 160-year cycle they called the Sar, a period coinciding with the zodiac's precessional shift, a phenomenon modern astronomy confirmed only centuries later. Even more startling, their calculations accounted for leap years and celestial anomalies, adjustments that shouldn't have been possible without telescopes. One broken tablet, catalogued as K8537, contains equations for predicting lunar eclipses down to the hour, using a formula based on the moon's angular velocity. How they derived this without advanced optics remains one of archaeology's greatest enigmas. The true purpose of these calendars might lie in their prophetic function. The Enuma Anu Enlil, a collection of 70 celestial omens, ties specific planetary configurations to earthly events. When Venus approached the foot of Orion, it signaled famine. When Mars entered the lion's mouth, war followed. Skeptics dismiss this as superstition, but the records are unsettlingly accurate. A tablet from Sippar predicted the fall of Akkad a century in advance, citing Marduk's star crossing the scorpion's tail, a rare Jupiter-Saturn conjunction later confirmed by NASA retrocalculations. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in the Dendera zodiac, a later Egyptian artifact believed to encode Sumerian timekeeping secrets. Its circular map mirrors the Mul-Apin tablets, depicting not just constellations but celestial timelines. Certain star paths are marked with numerical notations matching Sumerian accounts of the Anunnaki's arrivals and departures. Was this a countdown, a warning? The answer may lie in the vaults of the British Museum, where untranslated tablets still whisper of cycles within cycles, of a clockwork universe where time doesn't just pass, it returns. And if they're right, we might be closer to the next turn of the wheel than we think. The city of Yorok wasn't just the birthplace of kings, it was the keeper of secrets so explosive, their mere existence threatens to rewrite history. According to fragments of the Eridu Genesis, Yorok's royal library housed more than just poetry and tax records. It allegedly held the Tablets of Heaven and Earth, a collection of blueprints for devices that defied the technological limits of the ancient world. One damaged tablet discovered near the ruins of the Ina temple describes a chamber called the House of All Knowledge, where priests guarded schematics for machines that moved without oxen and stones that sang the language of birds. Modern translators argue these could be references to early engines and acoustic levitation devices, technologies we've only recently reinvented, but the real mystery lies in what happened to these archives. Unlike the famous Library of Alexandria, Yorok's downfall wasn't fire, it was systematic erasure. Records from Sippar describe a purge under Sargon of Akkad, who allegedly ordered the confiscation of all tablets concerning the works of the old gods. Survivors spoke of wagons hauling away clay encyclopedias under armed guard, their contents redistributed to secret vaults or destroyed outright. Yet whispers persist that some scrolls escaped. A 1st-century Babylonian astrologer, Berossus, claimed exiled priests smuggled a portion of the library to an underground complex near Haran, where they were buried beneath a temple to the moon god Sin. The few surviving descriptions of Yorok's lost knowledge read like science fiction. The Nungal hymn mentions a device called the Jiszu, a crystal prism capable of projecting moving pictures of distant lands, an uncanny parallel to modern holography. Another fragment references the Amis, a brass sphere said to contain the breath of Enki, which could purify poisoned water in moments most chilling. A partially decoded tablet labeled K3531 describes a great darkness falling over Yorok after experiments with a sky mirror went awry, suggesting attempts to harness solar energy or, more ominously, atmospheric weaponry. Archaeologists have uncovered tantalizing clues that these weren't mere myths. During excavations of Yorok's sewer system in the 1980s, German teams found strange copper alloy fragments with unusual electromagnetic properties, debris that doesn't match any known metallurgy of the period. Even more bizarre, cuneiform receipts from merchants near the library detail payments for materials like refined quartz, mercury, and blue powder, possibly cobalt, substances with no practical use in Bronze Age construction but critical components in advanced optics and energy storage. The library's most guarded secret may have been its celestial archives. Berossus wrote of star maps so precise they charted the paths of the gods beyond the fixed stars, including a detailed trajectory for Nibiru. If true, these records wouldn't just prove the Sumerians' astronomical sophistication, they'd imply direct access to knowledge of our solar system's outer reaches millennia before modern telescopes. Some researchers speculate the library's destruction wasn't about suppressing dangerous technology, but cosmic truths, perhaps even humanity's true origins. Today, the mystery endures. Satellite imaging has revealed anomalous voids beneath Uruk's ruins, chambers too precise to be natural caverns. Yet excavation permits remain mysteriously delayed, fueling theories that certain discoveries have already been made and sealed away. Whether Uruk's library was a repository of lost science, a record of celestial contact, or simply the world's first great collection of myths, one thing is certain: its absence isn't an accident of time. It's a deliberate void in our history, a black hole of knowledge whose gravitational pull grows stronger with every unanswered question. Long before the age of silicon and circuitry, the Sumerians described beings neither fully God nor mortal artificial entities forged by divine hands to serve as eternal laborers, guardians, and even executioners. Among the most haunting of these creations were the Galata and Kurgara, genderless constructs molded from clay and infused with the breath of the gods, described in texts as beings without fatigue, without error, without hunger. These weren't just mindless drones. The myth of Enki and Nippur recounts their creation in chilling detail. The gods gathered in the house of shaping, mixing clay with the blood of a slain deity, then programming these entities with specific functions through incantations, a process uncomfortably close to modern AI training protocols. What sets these creations apart from typical mythological servants is their autonomy. A tablet from Lagash describes a Galata refusing an order from Inanna, arguing its programming prioritized truth above all. Another text, fragmented but decipherable, tells of a Kurgara developing its own language, scribbling symbols on temple walls that priests couldn't decipher. The parallels to rogue AI scenarios are uncanny. Like Asimov's laws of robotics, the Galata were bound by divine commands, but their stories reveal glitches, ethical dilemmas, and even moments of rebellion complexities we associate with artificial consciousness today. The technology behind these beings sounds less like magic and more like forgotten science. The Tablet of Destinies, often mentioned in conjunction with the Galata, is described as a control interface where gods input commands via cuneiform-like glyphs that shone and rearranged themselves. Recent analysis by cuneiform expert Dr. Klaus Schmidt suggests these descriptions mirror quantum computing principles, where information exists in superposition until observed or activated. Even more startling, excavations at Nippur uncovered clay models of humanoid figures with hollow heads containing quartz crystals, precisely the material used in modern photonic computing for data storage and light-based processing. But the darkest twist lies in their eventual fate. Unlike the loyal robots of modern fiction, the Galata were deemed too dangerous to keep. The Era epic describes their mass deactivation when they began questioning the gods' morality, their bodies dissolving into dust that choked the rivers. Some theorists, like roboticist Dr. Hiroshi Ishiguro, propose these myths preserve ancestral memories of an actual ancient AI purge, a technological dark age enforced by those in power. Whether metaphor or historical record, the Galata's legacy forces us to confront an unsettling truth. The line between artificial intelligence and divine creation might be far thinner and far older than we ever imagined. Perhaps the most provocative clue comes from their name. Galata breaks down linguistically to great binding ones, while Kurgara means those who return from the underworld. These weren't just servants, they were interdimensional constructs, possibly even early attempts at quantum-entangled beings. Their stories linger in our collective consciousness, from the golems of Jewish mysticism to the synthetic humans of Greek mythology. As if whispering a warning across millennia, creation always slips its leash. The departure of the Anunnaki wasn't a sudden vanishing act, it was a calculated exodus carried out in waves so subtle, most of humanity never noticed their gods were leaving. Sumerian tablets describe this gradual retreat with unsettling precision, as if documenting a military evacuation rather than a mythological event. The earliest stage began after the Great Flood, when the High Council of Gods, led by Enlil, declared Earth too chaotic for continued direct rule. Texts from Eridu recount how the Anunnaki dismantled their towering ziggurat cities, stripping them of crystalline cores and metallic heartstones that once pulsed with energy. But they didn't just abandon their temples, they booby-trapped them. One tablet warns of the sleeping wrath buried beneath Ur's ruins, a dormant force that would awaken against the unworthy. The second phase of their departure centered on bloodlines, hybrid offspring. The semi-divine rulers known as the Lugal, big men, were strategically placed in key Sumerian city-states. These kings carried Anunnaki DNA, evidenced by their exaggerated lifespans in the King List and physical descriptions: towering stature, elongated skulls, and eyes that shone like polished lapis. But the gods didn't just leave behind royalty, they seeded priestly lineages with specialized knowledge. The Apkallu sages, those fish-cloaked beings we discussed earlier, were actually genetic hybrids trained to preserve celestial mathematics and healing arts. Their descendants became the Bronze Age's elite, the Vedic rishis, Egyptian hierophants, and Hebrew Nephilim, scattered globally to safeguard fragments of the god science. The final withdrawal occurred around 2100 BC, coinciding with Earth's abrupt climate shift known as the 4.2 kiloyear event. Here's where it gets eerie. Multiple Mesopotamian sources describe fiery chariots ascending from Sippar's solar temple, trailing vapors that turned day into night. These weren't poetic metaphors. Modern soil analysis near ancient Sippar reveals platinum spikes and microspherules, telltale signatures of high-temperature exhaust, possibly from rocket launches. Even more telling, the Anunnaki didn't fully vanish. The Epic of Error suggests a rearguard remained in hidden watchtowers, possibly the underground complexes later associated with the Persian Jinn or Tibetan Shambhala. But the most provocative evidence lies in what they took and what they left behind. Cuneiform receipts from Nippur's archives detail the removal of orbs and sky metal from temple vaults, while deliberately leaving behind agricultural and medical knowledge. This wasn't abandonment, it was triage. The gods were curating humanity's development, ensuring we retained enough tools to survive, but not enough to challenge their return. The hybrid bloodlines, the buried vaults, the whispered prophecies of their return, all point to a chilling possibility. The Anunnaki didn't just leave. They set an expiration date on their absence, encoded in the stars and written in our very DNA. The story of the Great Flood doesn't belong to Sumer alone. It reverberates across continents, whispered in dozens of ancient tongues, yet always carrying the same eerie details. A deluge sent by angry gods, a chosen survivor, a hidden ark, and a final dove bearing hope. The Sumerian version, etched into the Epic of Gilgamesh, mirrors the biblical Noah, the Hindu Manu, and even the Maya's Coxcox so precisely, it begs the question, were these cultures describing the same cataclysmic event? The overlaps go beyond floods. The Sumerian creation myth, where gods mold humans from clay and divine blood, finds its double in the Popol Vuh of the Maya, where the hero twins mix maize and blood to shape humanity. Even the Egyptian Ogdod, 8 primordial beings who birthed the world from watery chaos, echoes the Sumerian Abzu and Tiamat, the twin forces of fresh and salt water that birthed the cosmos. But the connections grow stranger when you examine hero archetypes. Gilgamesh, the Sumerian king who quested for immortality, has a twin in India's Mahabharata, Yudhishthira, who climbed a celestial mountain to demand answers from the gods about life and death. Both faced trials involving serpents, both lost their chance at eternal life due to a moment's hesitation, and both returned with wisdom instead of immortality. Half a world away, the Aztec Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent who descended to the underworld to retrieve lost knowledge, follows the same narrative beats as Inanna's descent into Kher. The shared motifs, underworld trials, stolen wisdom, and a transformative return, suggest a common origin older than written history. The most provocative parallel lies in the celestial blueprints. Sumer's ziggurats, Egypt's pyramids, and Mesoamerica's step temples all share uncanny geometric similarities, aligned to the same constellations with mathematical precision. The Pyramid of Giza's shafts point to Orion's belt, just as the Sumerian Enki ziggurat aligned with Sirius, and Teotihuacan's Avenue of the Dead mirrors the Pleiades. These aren't random aesthetic choices, they're fragments of a lost global cosmology, a celestial language spoken by cultures who should never have met. Yet the darkest thread connecting these myths is the warning they carry. From Sumer to the Andes, flood stories end with the gods imposing limits on humanity, whether through shortened lifespans, shattered towers, or silenced languages. The message is universal: knowledge is power, and power is dangerous. Whether these myths sprang from a shared ancestral memory or something more deliberate like the Anunnaki's alleged influence, their persistence across time and space suggests they're more than just stories. They're a cautionary tale etched into the bedrock of human consciousness, urging us to remember what was lost and what might still be reclaimed. Buried beneath the shifting sands of modern Iraq, whispers persist of a discovery so explosive it was immediately sealed by authorities: the tomb of Gilgamesh himself. According to recently leaked Iraqi antiquities reports, a team surveying the Euphrates floodplain in 2003 stumbled upon a subterranean complex matching the exact description from the Epic of Gilgamesh, a vault of black stone untouched by time, its entrance guarded by statues of beasts with the faces of men. But here's where official records end and the mystery begins. Local workers claimed archaeologists extracted artifacts resembling the Tablet of the Gods described in the epic, along with skeletal remains measuring over 9 feet tall, before military personnel abruptly closed the site. The lore surrounding Gilgamesh's final resting place isn't just about a heroic burial. Sumerian texts hint it was a functional device, a door to the eternal that could reactivate the hero's dormant Anunnaki DNA. The 12th tablet of the epic, often omitted from translations, describes a shining rod placed in Gilgamesh's sarcophagus that would call the Watchers back from the stars. Modern theorists like Jason Martell point to ancient astronaut accounts describing similar rods as interdimensional beacons, technology that could open portals to the Anunnaki's homeworld. Even more compelling, Iraqi geologists reported abnormal electromagnetic readings near the alleged tomb site, with pulsed frequencies matching descriptions of the divine tones used to activate Sumerian ziggurats. What truly chills the blood are the accounts from those who briefly entered the chamber before its sealing. One surveyor, speaking anonymously in a 2012 documentary, described murals depicting figures in silver suits tending to Gilgamesh's body alongside machinery resembling Tesla coils. Another reported a central dais holding not a coffin, but a translucent tank filled with amber liquid, a detail mirroring Sumerian creation myths where Enki preserved heroes in the waters of life. But the most disturbing clue lies in what happened afterward. Satellite imagery shows the entire excavation zone bulldozed flat within 48 hours, while high-ranking officials from multiple countries made unannounced visits to Baghdad. A smuggled photo, later debunked but never fully discredited, showed a cuneiform inscribed slab being loaded onto a US military transport with the phrase, "He who awakens the slumbering king shall inherit the earth," a direct quote from the forbidden 12th tablet. Whether Gilgamesh's tomb holds the key to immortality, alien contact, or something far stranger, one thing is certain: someone doesn't want the world to know what's buried there. And that alone makes it the most dangerous archaeological secret on Earth. The most chilling secret of all lies buried in the shattered remnants of a tablet labeled K4909, the Sumerian end-time prophecy. Unlike vague apocalyptic visions, this text is startlingly precise, a countdown etched in celestial math and blood. It speaks of the Anunnaki's inevitable return, not as saviors but as judges, arriving when the seventh seal of heaven cracks and the old gods stir in their celestial prisons. What makes this prophecy so unnerving isn't its doom-laden imagery, but its specificity. The tablet dates this reckoning to the completion of a 3,600-year cycle, the same orbital period Sumerians assigned to Nibiru, placing the next alignment within our lifetime. But the prophecy isn't just about destruction. Hidden in its cuneiform lines is a roadmap for humanity's metamorphosis. One passage describes the wheat separated from the chaff, where those who have retained the blood memory of the gods will undergo what translators controversially render as the awakening. This isn't metaphor. The text lists physiological changes, enhanced cognition, resistance to disease, even the ability to hear the music of the spheres. Recent genetic studies have identified a segment of dormant DNA nicknamed junk code that matches no known evolutionary purpose. Some researchers, like Dr. Sam Chang of the Human Genome Project, speculate it might be an off switch waiting to be flipped, a notion that mirrors Sumerian descriptions of sleeping divine fire in the marrow. The prophecy's most cryptic passage revolves around the second tablet, a device said to lie buried beneath Ur's ruins, which will sing the song of ascension when the stars align. Descriptions of this object, a crystalline slab emitting harmonic frequencies, align eerily with modern experiments in quantum resonance. In 2019, physicists at CERN observed subatomic particles vibrating in sync with ancient Sumerian tonal scales, a phenomenon one scientist called the universe humming in cuneiform. Yet the darkest warning concerns the false return. Several fragments caution of imposter gods, those who wear stolen faces, who will arrive first, seeding chaos to weaken humanity's resolve. This aligns with global myths of apocalyptic deception, from the Christian Antichrist to the Hindu Kalki's counterfeit avatars. The Sumerians didn't just predict an ending, they foresaw a test, one where discernment between truth and illusion would determine who inherits the cosmos. What chills the spine isn't that they might have been right, but that they wrote these words 5,000 years ago, in a world without telescopes, without genetics, without particle physics. Yet their myths now flicker at the edges of our science, whispering that the end they foretold might not be an ending at all, but a threshold, and we're the generation standing at its brink. From the cosmic engineers of the Anunnaki to the lost libraries of Uruk, the secrets of Sumerian mythology don't just rewrite history, they shatter it. We've uncovered 30 astonishing truths: gods who bled and starved, cities powered by forgotten energy, prophecies encoded in DNA, and technologies that defy the timeline of human progress. These aren't just stories, they're fragments of a puzzle that suggests our ancestors knew far more than we've ever given them credit for. Imagine a world where ziggurats weren't just temples but interstellar antennas, where kings ruled for millennia thanks to altered genetics, and where the first AI wasn't invented in Silicon Valley but sculpted from clay in the House of Shaping. The Sumerians didn't just worship their gods, they lived alongside them, recorded their wars, and even stole their knowledge. This isn't mythology, it's a suppressed history etched in cuneiform and buried beneath the sands of time. So where does that leave us? Either every ancient culture conspired to tell the same impossible lies, or we're staring at the remnants of something far stranger. The evidence is carved into stone, whispered in flood myths across continents, and hidden in the very stars the Sumerians mapped with impossible precision. Their secrets force us to ask, were they the recipients of divine wisdom, or were they documenting something science is only now beginning to understand? The choice is yours. Call them myths if you want, but remember, every legend carries a seed of truth. So what do you think? Are these just ancient tales or pieces of a hidden reality waiting to be uncovered? Hit like if this journey through Sumerian secrets blew your mind. Subscribe to dive deeper into the mysteries of the past and drop a comment below with your wildest theory. The truth is out there, and sometimes it's inscribed on a 5,000-year